have worked at many reputed institutes as interns, research fellows, or such. So how did you go about finding these opportunities and stuff?
So I think I would really thank my undergrad institution. I did my BTech in biotechnology from NIT Calicut. So it was in my hometown. And back then, when I joined as a first year, engineering student, the department was just 3 years old. So I was the third batch. And I would really like to thank my faculties there, and faculties and actually seniors there, who sort of led the way for the junior batches, because third batch of a branch like this, where back then it was in 2010, and back then biotechnology was not even a celebrated subject because people wouldn't want to be in biotechnology, including me. I got into biotechnology and I really wanted to shift to chemical engineering, which I'm really thankful that I didn't do because I love biology now. So the faculty there actually made a lot of efforts to encourage us to apply for internships, because it was all starting from the fact that we didn't have a lot of resources in the institute itself. So this is a real good lesson for the students nowadays, because sometimes we tend to sort of complain our surroundings that we don't have enough resources. So how do we do it? So you do it because you can actually find external resources, get hold of people who you can get help from, find opportunities, talk to people, and get mentors who can actually find you internships. So I was just blindly following my seniors back then, who sort of went ahead to do senior research fellowship in IITs, and then the next year they would do something like a Corona scholarship. There are too many scholarships that's available now for students, where you can actually taste a bit of abroad research opportunities. So I did that. I did Corona scholarship in my third year, and then by fourth year I was quite sure that I really wanted to be in academia and research, and then I applied for PhD in TIFR. So that's how.
Come across anything very unusual that you think is unusual during your research journey?
So yeah, actually, so a lot of times that's how research goes, right? So you can never have a plan, and you should have a plan, of course, PhD, because you start the PhD with a project proposal, which is itself a plan. But all you can plan is like what area and what questions you would like to address. But then when you go deeper into a particular question, especially for biology, I mean, I can't say for other subjects, because I guess chemistry will also be like that, physics will also be like that, because nature, which has chemistry, physics, biology, maths, and everything, it's definitely unpredictable. We as humans and we as researchers, we think that we're really predicting and we're really going ahead with the hypothesis and so on. But it's good. It's good to have a plan, but you should also be very open to surprises, because that's what happened both during my PhD and my postdoc. We were surprised because we were actually thinking of these microRNAs to be following a path that we thought was right. But what happened was that initially we saw an opposite effect. And trust me, I was not the person to start this project. This idea or the thread was there in the group lab for like at least 5-6 years. And it did not see the light of publication, because people just thought it was the wrong result, right? Because when it goes opposite to what you actually expect, then you question yourself and you're like, oh, did I do this experiment right? Is the sample correct? Did I isolate it correctly? Did I assay it correctly? Did I analyze it correctly? So this happened, this went back and forth in the lab, and then eventually Ulas also realized that we've been seeing this for a long time. It can't be untrue. It has to be, there needs to be something. And that's how me and Tandrika got into this project, and we again did like multiple repeats of the same, and we started seeing the same thing, and then we started believing it. And that's when you start asking questions around the new observation, and then sort of prove it. Because if you go ahead with a plan and if you only want to see what you want to see, then that's not interesting, I would say. And science doesn't work that way, and definitely all of us know that. So my PhD project was one where we actually we were sort of following something which was unusual. And during my postdoc, again, this happened that this is not about unusual finding, but it's about persistence and trying to find all ways to prove something if you have an instinct that and if you think that it is true. So I saw an observation and I really wanted to sort of follow it. But back then when I joined the lab, it was 4 years back during COVID, in 2020, we didn't have a lot of expertise in a technique which required me to prove this point. So my PI in SDU, Professor Susanna Mandrup, she's very supportive. She's a super nice boss and super nice scientist. She sort of supported me to say that, okay, go ahead. I mean, if you think you can do it, you do it. And as a postdoc, we get a lot of independence, even more than a PhD student, to sort of venture into a project. So I spent around 2.5 years to sort of get around this one technique, which is a very simple technique, fact sorting, which is used for isolating single cells for age-old experiments. So it's not a new technique, but unfortunately our lab did not have any expertise there. So it's weird to think that I took 2.5 years to do facts in the lab, but it was interesting that I was the one who started it in the lab and figured out everything related to it, ordered stuff that was required, and then I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it, spent a lot of time on it, and eventually now we have a beautiful setup where the coming generations in the lab can use it. So I would say it's not a heroic thing that I did. It's just that I'm a bit stubborn when it comes to experiments, and if I think I want to do it, I would like to do it. And what helped me was the support from the PIs, both Ullas and Susanna. They really helped me to just get going, and I didn't waste any time. I was just on it repeatedly. It failed multiple times, but I just went ahead and did it again the next day. So then eventually I got there. So that's the unusual thing that I have done during my postdoc, I would say.
So you just mentioned that you became a mother recently, and many congratulations for that. And it is quite incredible to see female scientists like you juggle research and motherhood, and I'm sure it would just get scary at times. So we would really love to know what were the challenges you faced during such a time, and what kept you motivated throughout your journey into motherhood as well as your research journey in general.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question, because as a mother, there are so many things that a woman goes through, which I had no idea. I mean, if I had an idea, I don't know if I would be, happily up for it. But I'm glad that I went through it, and I'm glad that I'm a mother right now. But there are so many things that a woman has to take care of at this point, not just after becoming a mother, right? Right from the moment that you're going to carry a baby, your career is at no, I wouldn't say risk, but your career is really at stake, because there are so many things that you are not supposed to do as a experimental scientist. There's too many experiments that you are not supposed to be doing, because the chemicals are toxic, and then it affects your body and mind and so on. So for me, it was really a shock that I could not go to the lab and really work during the early days of my pregnancy. I'm not a computational scientist that I could just sit in front of the computer and do and continue to do my work. So that was also unfortunate that I couldn't do a lot of things during the pregnancy time. But what really helped me is that I think it's three things. I would say it's three things. You really need to have for yourself, you need to have the conviction that you want to do it, both. Like, you want to do the motherhood part and you want to do the career as well. So you need to make up your mind first. There's a lot of brain changes that happens during motherhood and pregnancy. So despite all of that, I think that's the most difficult part that I went through, to keep myself motivated and to tell myself that, yes, I can do it again. I've taken a break, but I'm going to come back. I've taken a break, but I can still talk about my work in a podcast. So things like this. I mean, it was not easy for me to come up and just talk about my work after, not being associated with anything for a long time. So today, I took that effort, right? I told myself that I can do it. So A, it starts with you. B, you really need to have a supportive environment, and I've been very lucky to have that. Starting from my husband, he has been there my side for everything. I would give a lot of credit to him. He's called Akhil, and he's a chemical engineer. He moved to Denmark to actually support me during this time. We were actually long distancing. He was working back in India then, but the moment we got pregnant, and he was there during the vacation, and the moment we got pregnant, he decided that he's going to leave his job and come to Denmark and support me. He was there all throughout. So that starts with your partner. And then the family, your core family, my parents, his parents were all on board with it. And they were all like, yes, we want to make sure that you and the baby and the core family is okay. So everyone was supportive that way. And then the last thing during pregnancy, at least, was my work environment, my boss. Specifically, I would give a lot of credit to Susanna, because she was just there for me. She hugged me and she told me that, don't worry, we're going to get through this. You can do it. And she made sure that she gave me time to come back, because the initial phases of my pregnancy was not that easy. I had a lot of nausea, vomiting, and everything. And that was also a very crucial time for my project, because we were trying to get to a point where I can start thinking about the publication. So it was a shock for the lab, for the whole group who was working on this project, because then I would be away for a long time. But they all gave me a lot of time and support and love. And also when I am going through some, health issues, they were there, and they took over and gave me a lot of leverage to really take a break and come back afresh. And eventually, when you become a mother, I think it also depends upon the baby. Every baby is different. Every demand is different. So if you also think you have a supportive baby, it's very, very positive that you can get back and come back to shape in your career. So, but it's definitely not easy. Yeah.
Sounds so inspirational, ma'am.
Thank you.
Like,
I
really.
think so initially, but now that I talk about it, it could be. I hope it helps people who are really thinking about taking career and motherhood or family ahead.
Also, ma'am, I've heard that recently there was a Nobel Prize for the microRNA. So I think due to that, it is garnering more attention
Yeah.
and more potential to the field. So how do you think it will influence the young researchers who would like to go into this specific field?
It's so great. So like when I was a PhD student, I used to be so intrigued about the Nobel Prize thing, and it was a joke within the field. I mean, all the scientists would know, right? It's a joke that you cannot get a Nobel Prize unless you are retired and you're an emeritus professor, or sometimes you're gone from the world that people recognize your work. But now we see that more and more very recent researchers are being appreciated, and these kind of heroic attempts to kind of characterize something that people thought was junk is amazing. And specifically with respect to microRNAs, I remember a time when I was, I think it was during a conference or something where I was explaining my poster with someone came to me. So it's not a professor or anything, but a student came to me, and then he was probably senior to me back then, and he just gave me a look, and he was just like, "Oh, microRNAs are so outdated. MicroRNAs are so saturated. The field is so saturated, and why are you still working on it?" Well, he said it because that's what people thought back then. Even in our lab, we used to think that, okay, we are hitting a roadblock. What do we do? Are we really chasing something that's a saturated field? And today we have the Nobel Prize for microRNAs, and many more groups are actually jumping onto microRNAs and looking at multiple regulations of them. And I think till date, we don't know 100% everything about these microRNAs. And that's a good thing about science, right? You can never, ever go around it completely. You would think that you've made a circle, but you're not even halfway through. So I really think that it's all about your perspective, and it's all about your thought process, that if you think it's outdated. But if you want to, if you have an instinct that tells you that, no, I really want to sort of go further into it and there's something in it, just go ahead and find it, because you never know, you are the next Nobel Prize winner maybe. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that is really, really important when you are actually a researcher, that conviction and that passion that you really want to pursue something, and you put all of your heart and soul and hard work into it. So I think with that, we would like to come to an end to our podcast. And thank you so much for this wholesome conversation. And thank you very much for your time, ma'am. Your words will surely leave a great impact on our listeners. And all the very best for your future journey ahead.